Powerhouse storm that wreaked havoc from Florida to Maine is moving into southeastern Canada. And while weather conditions have improved for much of the mid Atlantic and South Atlantic coast, there's still a few things going on to the north and east as the rain moves through northern Maine and heads through parts of southeastern Canada, New Brunswick, and beyond. We will wind this all up and recap this major storm and talk about the calmer weather for the week ahead. Maybe give some hints for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and we'll sprinkle a little long range in there too. And that's all tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, which of course is brought to you by, hello, there you go, Tempest by Weatherflow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system. Join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. Would have been handy if you had one for this particular storm. Uh, use the link is pinned to the top of the chat board. Tempest is an affiliate of the Joe and Joe Weather Show, and use the link and the coupon code I want a weather station. Because if you do, or anything else that you buy on there, Joe Rayo will gladly tell you what you'll get.
You'll get 10% off, Joe.
Yes, you will. Now, brother, what a storm this was. It just about ripped records apart up and down the eastern seaboard in so many different ways. Uh, I don't think we're going to be able to go through all of them, but I mean, really, just truly astounding. And I want to just go back to what I said a few times during the month of November with regarding how strange the weather was at times during the summer and fall, things happening where you didn't think they were going to happen. Uh, Following certain patterns and figuring that, well, this is how many hurricanes and tropical storms we're going to get. We wound up, going completely opposite of that. And I said we're probably going to see some weird stuff this winter, and I think we could put this one in the box of weird stuff because this really was very impressive, to say the least.
Well, one of our friends on the chat board, Dennis Cassia, who lives in Monroe, Connecticut, sent me a note on Facebook earlier today. He said, we got hammered. He said, I lost power at 5 a.m. 20 roads in Monroe were closed this morning due to trees coming down. The power company is on my street. I'm hopeful. And just now, this is 14 hours after he lost power. He just said, we just got our power back, but no Wi-Fi. Our data here is terrible. So he's going to try to watch the show. But that's just one example of how many people were really put through the ringer by this particular storm that came on by late yesterday and last night. I used the analogy, Joe, that it was going to move through our area like a 40-ton Mack truck. And it looks like a lot of us got run over by that storm. I got 3.7 inches here in Putnam County. Oh, P.S. at Westchester Airport, they broke a record. They broke the old record from 1991 of 62 degrees, 61 degrees. They got to 62. I got to 63 this morning at about 7:30. We're far from that now. We're down into the low 40s. So, this, as you said, this storm had a little of everything except, of course, for the white stuff.
Newark also set a record high temp at 64. Another interesting note was the fact I saw Rich Hoffman from News 12 post this on Facebook because I always like to give credit where credit is due. But we were talking yesterday about the timing here, how important it was. If the wind didn't shift before noontime, it was going to be a big deal for coastal flooding. And the high tides, Joe, were the highest along the South Shore and over eastern Long Island, the highest tide since Hurricane Sandy. I mean, there was quite a bit of tidal flooding with all of this, and that was something that we were worried about last night with respect to the timing of the storm and that south wind, which obviously it became it was a problem. But I mean, between that and of course, we also had The tornado in Myrtle Beach, the EF1 tornado there, 90-mile-an-hour winds with that. There was a few other things that went. Oh, and in some places too, in coastal South Carolina to North Carolina, when we were showing the radar last night, some of those areas got a foot of rain, and the rainfall amounts. Talk about with respect to convection, we use that double rule, which I think works pretty well. And when you got thunderstorms, and you can sort of take the general forecast of what you think the precip is going to be, you could say that at least in the convective areas, it could wind up being double that amount. And there were a lot of places that wound up getting 4 and 5 inches of rain. Not just Long Island like it was last week, but Long Island in New Jersey, in the Hudson Valley. I mean, it was just an absolute clobbering.
It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible out there. We lost power actually here at my house for about 20 seconds. As soon as the power went out, and I saw everything went dark in my bedroom. We have two digital clocks, one on Renata's side of the bedroom and another on my side, and they just semi light up the room with their bright. And it just went dark. The whole room went dark, and I said, "Uh-oh, here we go, here we go." And after 20 seconds, the power came back. And I just looked to the sky and I said, "Thank you. Thank you." And of course, I said, this is only the beginning. I'm sure we're going to lose it again sometime overnight tonight. I'm just going to close my eyes and just hope for the best. We never did lose power after that, but we did get walloped with a lot of rain. So that's the lesser of two evils, I guess.
Well,
is that we didn't have to go through hour after hour after hour of no power.
I have it on very good authority, Joe, that the CEO of what is it you have? Was it PSE&G?
No,
NYSEG?
we have NYSEG.
NYSEG? Well, I have it on good authority that the entire executive branch of NYSEG is glued to the Joe and Joe Weather Show Sunday through Thursdays at 7:35 p.m. So perhaps they, tied an extra line to your house when you were asleep last night to make sure you didn't lose power, or there's a secret generator going on somewhere.
I'll tell you what, here in Putnam Valley, if you visit our community, you'll think that there may be some strange virus or some strange disease that is infecting the trees, because a lot of the trees, excuse me, have red spots on them. And the reason why they have red spots is that back in October now, NYSEG went around to check trees that they felt were potentially dangerous for power lines that could very well fall on power lines. And they said, these trees have got to go. And when they were in front of my house, I asked the guy, this is again late October, I said, "So when are you guys going to do this?" And he said, "Oh, sometime in November." And I said, "No, you're not. No, you're not, because they've done this now for the past 2 years. They've sprayed red dots on the trees and said,
and then they never show up.
And they never show up. Now, from what I found out from the county, from the town executive here in Putnam Valley, they're going to come in January." And I said, "Oh yeah, January! What a great month to cut trees down. I mean, if we don't have ice and snow by then, So I'm saying to myself last night with the way the winds were blowing, I said, one of those trees with the red dots is coming down. One of the but apparently it did not. So yeah, we just had a temporarily 20-second outage, and the power came back. And then again, you could be people like Dennis, who waited like over half a day to get the power back. But what are you going to do? That's weather in our time.
Well, headed down here where it was windy and didn't get above 42 all day. It's 34 now, and it's still windy. We should probably bottom out around 19 or 20 tomorrow morning, which ought to be fun. But anyhow, just to let everybody know, first of all, welcome tonight to everybody on the chat board, and to those of you who are not on the chat board, welcome to tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. We're here Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. and off Fridays and Saturdays unless there's a storm around. We just to give everybody a heads up. So this week, Wednesday, will be the last show of the week. and we will not be back until after Christmas. So we'll be back next Tuesday. So Joe and I are going to take a nice long stretch of time off, and there really isn't going to be too much weather going on to speak of, other than that maybe we could be speculating on the long range at the end of the week and Sunday and Monday. But I think being that it's Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, you'll understand that we're going to take that time. But anyhow, if you like the show, hit the like button. Love it when we go over 100 likes, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. We've got over 14,000 now. And subscribe so you don't miss us. You turn on the notifications. And then for sure, if YouTube sends them out on time, that you won't miss the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Otherwise, you could watch it on a replay. Okay, I thought I'd start off tonight just to go back and look at the surface maps from yesterday. This was at 1 o'clock in the afternoon when the low center was near Charleston, and they had a storm surge there, by the way, which was the highest storm surge since Hurricane Hugo back in 1989, and the fifth highest on record in Charleston, South Carolina. But there was the low sitting there as a 990-ish low, and the way they had it analyzed yesterday at 1 o'clock, look at this bizarre warm front cutting through eastern North Carolina and then kind of swinging east across central New Jersey. There was a wedging going on from this high that was sitting off of Nova Scotia and just sort of wedging down, pretty much forcing the issue for that low. Then, of course, you had this front that was to the west, and that was with the upper trough that was swinging around the Great Lakes that gave this a little extra energy. And remember, we watched this thing. I'm not going to go back when it was in the Gulf of Mexico, but we watched this thing come develop in the Gulf of Mexico, and it started setting up early last week with all sorts of disorganized clouds there, and then we had this we had the subtropical jet from the Pacific coming across Mexico and into and across the Gulf of Mexico and across Florida. So the seeds were there for something intense to form, and that pretty much is what happened. And this is why is this is weird.
By the way, Tom Contino on the chat board, Putnam Valley got 3.67 at 3 p.m. train spotter. Tom, that was me. I normally, when I post something to the National Weather Service, I still say member of the media, since I assume that what we're doing right now, Joe, is media coverage.
Of course it's media.
And since we had between us like 80 years worth of media time between us and 40 plus years for myself alone, but they called me a train spotter. I didn't go through any of those. They actually do have lessons on how you take proper weather observations. The only thing I did was I have one of these not exactly like the Tempest weather station, but I have a weather station and it has a rain gauge with a tipping spoon and it collects the rainfall, and that's what we had between yesterday when the rain started at 11:30 in the morning and when it finally ended at around 2:30 this afternoon. 3.67 inches of wet stuff that collected in my little rain gauge bucket. So that was me, Tom, in Putnam Valley. So thanks for recognizing that.
Maddie, Bucky's or Boucher's. If it was Hyacinth Bouquet, she would say it Boucher. But for those of you, he just says, Joe, for those of you just tuning in, the Verrazano Narrows Bridge had a gust of 83.4 miles an hour, and sustained was 68.5. And I do understand they actually closed the bridge for a while today.
Can you imagine trying to go over the bridge with those kind of winds?
I've done the Throgs Neck Bridge with 40 to 50. And I did it in a very, very, I did it a few times in a very, very small Toyota. It's not the best feeling in the world when you actually feel your vehicle lift up off the ground. Well, anyway, here's the 18Z map from yesterday. So let's see if it works the way it's supposed to. No, for some reason it's not doing that. That's really bizarre. It jumps. The maps are not laid correctly. 18, 21, no, 0. Okay, I guess there was something wrong with the 21Z map. This was at 7 o'clock last night. The low is, just southeast of Myrtle Beach, and you already could see the isobars tightening as it moved on, as you look further north, and then it just continued to straddle the coastline. That's the thing that kind of amazed me here, because you don't often see tracks like this, but this thing just basically straddled the coastline all the way up, and the isobars here this morning. I mean, you look at all these southerly isobars from the New Jersey coast eastward. Uh, so I mean, you just basically had this long fetch of wind pushing water up to the south shore, and of course, as we said, it was so critical for the wind shift to occur. Before the high tide, the morning high tides between 9 and noon, and unfortunately, that did not happen. And the result was the very high tidal surges that occurred. And now we have these maps haven't been updated. The last one is from 10 o'clock this morning, and that's it. That's the latest map. So they're actually way behind here. We should have the 21Z map by now. Oh, there it is. Finally, the 21Z map at 5 o'clock. The low centered right over Boston. It's 978 low. Of course, all the winds have turned around to the northwest on the west side of all of this, and it's bringing down some colder air. We're actually seeing some snow on the radar, which we'll get to in a second. But I was really pretty much amazed. Because a lot of times they don't do that. Either they go inland by a fair distance, or they go out by a fair distance, and then sometimes they actually do go in between. But this one just kind of straddled the coastline, and that northern system is getting involved. So that's why you see the the low center from what came out of the Gulf is still an identifiable feature over Boston, and then you have another low that's sitting somewhere near Montreal. So, and that, of course, by the way, Maine getting hit very hard. I think there were over 500,000 people out without power in Maine, and almost 500,000 people from Maine down to New York State and northern New Jersey and into Long Island. So this storm really had a big impact. And right now we're seeing rough weather going on in New Brunswick. The rains have kind of tapered off a little bit in Maine, but up in New Brunswick, we've got some heavy rains going through there, and they arc back to the other side of the St. Lawrence River into areas around Montreal, for example, in southern Quebec province, and that's lifting on up to the northeast. And now you got the lake effect happening here in north central New York, in southwestern New York, western Pennsylvania, into northeast Ohio, down through West Virginia, and even into the Blue Ridge Mountains in North Carolina. Uh, it's a quick shot of what I would call dirty cold air, but somebody's at least getting some snow out of this. The good news, right, Joe, is that we're done with this now. You don't have any headaches to look ahead to for a while.
You're right. A protracted spell of tranquil weather. By the way, on my weather station, I noted I did a little bit of a double take when I saw this about an hour or so ago. I think it's probably a little higher now. 29.07 inches for the barometric pressure, which, if you want to translate that to millibars, 984 millibars. That was recorded again about an hour or two ago, right here in little old Putnam Valley. That's pretty darn low for any time of the year, and that's just another example of just how deep this storm is. But again, it's moving away, and in its wake, we're going to be going through a spell of, again, tranquility. I threw in maybe the possibility of a shower on Saturday, a brief light shower, but I think for the most part, we'll probably just go with a lot of cloud cover on Saturday and a nice little warm up. In fact, we'll be near 50 degrees on Christmas Day. So, no, it looks like we're not going to have a white Christmas, but at least, as you just mentioned, Joe, tranquility now through the balance of the week into the holiday weekend, and a nice quiet weather day on Christmas Day next week on Monday.
Yes. All right. So in the west, we've got, since I got the radar up, so you can see the system in the east. There's also, we have action in the west as A couple of storms are moving into California, and the first round is tonight, and you're seeing some heavy rains, and there'll probably be some heavier snows in the Sierra Nevadas, and also getting some rain up in the Pacific Northwest. The Southeast is dry, the plains are dry, so that's good. And we can take a look at this on the satellite view, and you'll watch that. Look at that feed that goes from the Dominican Republic all the way up the Atlantic and getting swept in over Nova Scotia and into southeastern Canada. I mean the whole thing is just impressive to me. And then there's the upper trough behind it. Of course, it's kind of that it's sort of pivoting around, so it's just very impressive.
It was quite a storm, no question about that. And nobody can say, Joe, that you and I, did not warn everybody about this late yesterday or last evening. We said this was going to be loaded for bear. It was. It's gone now, and I think we can all be happy to relax for the balance of this week. Although I did have one other thing. As I've mentioned on occasion, I do have a semi-extensive light display, and the lighting on the garage. Well, first of all, Santa's sleigh got knocked over by the winds last night. Renato was able to get it back up this afternoon. But on the garage, now we have half of the lights that are around the garage doors are out. They weren't out when they popped on this late this afternoon or this evening, but now half of them have gone out. Renato says, well, maybe it's a fuse, or maybe it's a light that happened to go out and cause the other lights to go. I don't know, but that's the extent so far of damage, at least in terms of lighting for the holidays here at Shea Rayo.
Well, very good. Okay, WPC. Now this is well deserved, from North Carolina to southern and southeastern New England, and extending up into a small portion of Maine. No precipitation forecast for the next 7 days, which takes you right through Christmas night, 8 o'clock next Monday. So that's good. Much needed rain will fall in the next 7 days in the lower Mississippi Valley and across the central Gulf states. So that's going to help to alleviate the drought conditions, continue to alleviate the drought conditions there, anywhere from 1.5 inches to as much as 2.5 to 3 inches in southeast Louisiana. And of course, up and down the West Coast, we're going to see heavy rains and as much as a few inches, even as far south as San Diego, and then going all the way up the coast, covering L.A., San Francisco, and points northward. Tails off a little bit when you get into Oregon, then picks up again when you get up towards Seattle. But a lot of moisture there in the west. And as far as snow is concerned, oh God, I set this map up again. The same thing happened. It decided to refresh itself. Oh, no, wrong map. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, this is it. Okay, here we go. It didn't do it. As far as snow is concerned, because we do have winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories up for up and down the Appalachians, particularly in West Virginia, and some areas are going to get small areas here. It's a fairly narrow band that runs from southwest PA down through eastern West Virginia, where we're talking about 3 to 6, 4 to 8 in there. That darker blue. Also in southwestern New York, basically between Buffalo and Cleveland. The I-90 corridor up there is going to be dealing with snow showers and snow squalls that are coming in off of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, going a little bit further north in north central New York. Looks like a few inches there, not a big deal. And some heavier snow bands continuing on the eastern shore of Lake Michigan. So in western Michigan on the lower peninsula, the big pile up there in Kalamazoo on the interstate. I don't know what highway it is, but they got absolutely, they had a massive accident there, and some light snow amounts up in the upper peninsula of Michigan. So that's the extent of the snow maps, because after tomorrow, there really isn't a whole lot going on at all in the east as far as snow is concerned. And the WPC on their probabilities for at least two Its map is doing a nice refresh for me. Just very nice. Thank you. But this is the area that's got high probabilities, and again, it sort of matches up with what's on the radar with respect to who's going to get what. Cleveland to Buffalo in that corridor there, and also in the mountains of West Virginia. Winter storm warnings, as you see, in the pink areas in the Cleveland to Buffalo corridor, and also in the Appalachians from Southwest PA down into West Virginia. Uh, Becomes winter weather advisories as you go into southern West Virginia, westernmost Virginia, and southeastern Kentucky, and then in a narrow band in the Blue Ridge Mountains in North Carolina. Flood watches are still up for a little while longer in northeastern New York, in Vermont, New Hampshire. We've got flash flood warnings in those red spots in those counties in western Maine, high wind warnings in eastern Maine, wind advisories in counties that aren't covered by the high wind warnings. And by the way, it was it's been pretty windy here today, especially in the mountain areas. We've been getting gusts of 30 to 35 pretty much all day long, so it wasn't really a whole lot of fun to be outside on this magical night
What's
here
that?
in North Georgia.
What's that area in light blue over northeast Florida or southern Georgia,
I'm
Joe?
thinking, is that a freeze? Freeze warning.
Freeze
I
warning.
guess
Okay.
there must be a handful of counties in southeast Georgia, and they have a freeze watch in the light blue, and also in coastal Florida, they've got the light blue going up and down. Oh, that's a rip current. It's almost the same color, but it's not. So that's a rip current right along the immediate coast. It's a rip current statement.
Right.
So I guess it's an official, release that says we're having rip currents. Uh, so they've made the statement. But yeah, I guess these areas have not had much in the way of 32-degree temperatures to deal with. Although here up in the northern part of Georgia, we've had our days down near 20, and even in some places the teens. So it has been cold. All right, so see what else do we have? I did the surface. Um, we did the weather services watches and warnings. So let's look at what the GFS has to say, and we'll wait for the maps to load again. So here's what it looks like on the surface. So you got one low consolidating tonight in southeastern Canada, moving away. Still have a bit of a gradient tomorrow. I think I think there's a chance that there's probably going to be a lot of speckled stuff on the radar tomorrow. So I'm thinking if you see a snow shower, don't be shocked because they're probably going to be scattered around. Certainly, if you go to upstate New York or into Pennsylvania, particularly the western part of the state. So maybe something might sneak over the mountains during the day tomorrow, which should be a pretty windy day and a cold day. Same for the winds should die off on Wednesday. Not a whole lot happening here from coast to coast on Wednesday, Joe. There's the next storm coming into California, and yeah, you got that warmer air that's going to try to move in, and there's probably just a little bit of a warm front there that goes by to our north. So I could see why, certainly might want to put, you mentioned about putting clouds in for maybe for later Friday into Saturday. And then after that, we have to wait for this next low that's going to be coming out of the Rockies with the who's going to have a snow on Christmas Eve? Well, maybe Denver is, and Wyoming also in blue in the snow, and that's really about it. And we're not going to see any rain here. That system's going to be pretty weak. It mostly falls apart as it comes eastward. But what's interesting to me, Joe, is the fact that I've been cautiously encouraged by the what the upper air's been doing, and then when I looked at everything last night and today, I'm I'm beginning to lean to the idea now that this pattern is about to break down with the trough in Alaska. I think we're going to start to see those changes the beginning of next week. We're going to see the upper air start to change, particularly in the Pacific, which is where it's most important. And the GFS and the European both bear this out. The GFS takes a little longer to get there, but I think we're going to get into a pattern where we may have some chances for some snow when we get into the very beginning of January. I mean, the upper air just looks much different.
Well, I was going to ask a question. First of all, I want to thank Robert Lumnicki and Johnny Quest and the chairman, Scott Briller, for hitting the tip jar, and Leon Probitsky. I don't want to leave you out either. But a question raised by the chairman, he says, Joe, when the pattern finally changes to cold and snowy, do you think do you guys think it's going to be locking in, or will it be transitory? In other words, will it just be a temporary bit of cold and snowy? And to that, before you said anything, Joe, in the last minute or so, I was going to answer back by saying, do you really think we're going to change to cold and snowy the way things have been shaping up and the way we keep putting the cold and snowy weather pattern off? But it looks like we may very well do change to a cold, snowy weather pattern, or at least cold pattern, when we get into the new year. Whether or not it locks in or whether or not it moves out quickly, that I really can't answer. I don't know if you want to try and take a
I'll say this. Rather than use the word cold, I would say colder.
Yeah.
One of the and I just drew this off the last frame of the GFS, where you have a split flow, which actually could be pretty interesting because you do have a flow connection that goes from north of Alaska, southeast, the south of Hudson Bay, and across upstate New York and New England, and then you have this southern jet that is prevalent, and there are systems there along it. For example, you've got this wrapped up. I mean, who knows if it's actually going to be like this, but you do. I think it's going to look something like this, where you're going to have an active southern stream. I don't know how cold the air is going to be, though. That's the thing. It might be cold enough, but it may just barely be cold enough. But they'll if you're thinking along the lines of some big Arctic air mass coming down, that I don't think is going to happen. I think what's going to happen is you're going to have maybe an area of slightly below normal temperatures that's just going to gradually spread out to our north, and some of that is going to wind up bleeding southward. And if you can time it right with something taking a favorable track, I think it opens the door for the possibility of some frozen precipitation. But we got to get there first. And the other thing I would say is that the important thing is what's been going on up in Alaska, and I'll backtrack here because that's where you need to make the real important change here. There's been that troughing in Alaska down into the Gulf of Alaska that's basically cut us off from any kind of Arctic air. So, for example, if I draw the flow here over Alaska with this trough that's out there, that's where the air is going. I mean, it's actually going northward up the Pacific Northwest coast and into the Arctic region, and that kind of leaves us in this sort of flow of Pacific air across Canada. This is on Christmas Eve, by the way. So there really is no cold air to speak of next week. You still have, though, this sort of active southern part of the jet stream that's kind of hanging there. So this is the part that needs to be repaired, is the area that's up to the north, and the GFS and the European, both on the operational runs and on the ensemble runs, are showing that happening. The troughing in Alaska takes a different look to it, and what I do like is the fact that by the time we get toward the end of the forecast period, it's all ridging up there, and I think that's where the difference lies, because now you've got your flow of air. Actually, you do have a bit of a jet that comes down from Canada. It's not a powerful jet, but it might be enough to spread out colder air into the east, into the northern, the Great Lakes and the northeast and northern mid-Atlantic states. I don't know that it gets much further south than that, but this is a much more favorable, I should say. This is a much more favorable pattern with regards to getting cold and maybe some frozen precipitation out of it.
And maybe somebody there, I think so far Central Park has had 0 snow this entire month, not even a trace. Is that do you agree on that, Joe?
I think that may very well be the case.
I mean, those kind of Decembers are very few and far between. So unless we pick up like maybe a stray snow shower at Central Park between now and the end of the year, this may be, I think, only the second or third time that December has gone the entire month without seeing a single snowflake, not a flake, not a pellet, not an ice
Right, not a
pellet.
flake, not no. It's the order of operations, Joe, is not a flake, not an ice pellet, not a raindrop, nothing,
Nothing.
nothing. Well, they got
Nothing.
raindrops, and I wonder if
Oh,
it's
that's had plenty of raindrops.
I wonder if it's going to turn out to be the wettest. I bet you it winds up at least being in the top 5 wettest Decembers on record. If
Well, that would be nice considering that we had what, one of the wettest Julys on record, one of the wettest Septembers on record. I mean, it seems like a broken record, doesn't it?
a, a lot of extremes, a lot of extremes are showing up. And I do want to mention one other extreme that's happened too, but not here. But before we do that, because Flood Weather did send the charts of the teleconnections. This is the PNA, the Pacific North America Index, which starting at the end of this week and going into next week and beyond. I mean, it peaks at 3 standard. This is the first time we've seen the PNA this strong, plus 3 standard deviations from the mean, and it tails off toward the end of the forecast period when we get into January, which is around the 1st and 2nd, but it just kind of still a bit above the neutral line, and you want to follow the green line. The blue line is the control. I never really pay attention to that. The green line is the mean, and the mean gets the 3 standard deviations and starts to go down, but it's still over 1 standard deviation positive. So you want a positive PNA. Well, I mean, if you want at least the chance for precipitation of the frozen variety, you want this coupled with a couple of other things, which I'm going to get to. But you certainly want this to get that ridge in the west, trough in the east idea. So that's one thing to deal with. The East Pacific Oscillation, which I have always said is the one that's most important, starting on the just after Christmas, it goes negative, kind of goes back to neutral briefly, and then really drops off negative for the last days of December and the first days of January. It's 3 standard deviations negative. That's telling you that cold air is going to be spreading out across southern Canada and points eastward. And I think the GFS on the surface sort of bore that out. And then of course we've got the NAO, if I can get to that. This is the NAO, which is actually forecast to go negative from Christmas Eve till around the 20 till about the 30th. Then it kind of pops positive, but that doesn't matter that much to me. If if the EPO is negative, I could care less of what the NAO is doing. I'd rather have the EPO negative, and that's the most important thing. So the teleconnections are going in the right direction. I think the ensembles, the operational runs have been slowly coming around. It's a grinding process, a pattern change. It's not a flip on a dime, as we've been saying. It takes time, but it is I think it's going to get underway. And Dave Toleris, Bill Kirk, and others who have bullish forecasts for January, February, into March would suggest that pattern we're shifting into maybe it has staying power, but we got to get there first.
I agree. We keep looking every single day to see when we're about to turn the corner. And I don't know, Joe, so far for me, I'm still looking for the corner.
Yes. This storm, by the way.
By the way, I just took a look, and believe it or not, on December 7th, Central Park recorded a trace of snow. I don't know where they found it. I don't know where they got it, but they recorded a trace. So this is not going to be, there have been only 3 cases at Central Park, 1877, 2006, and 2011, where we've had no snow. This is not going to be one of those years at Central Park. And if you're wondering The winter of 1877-78 with no snow in December, 8.1 inches for the entire season.
Well,
2006-2007, no snow in December, 12.4 inches. And in 2011-2012, 7.4 inches. I have not now had a chance to look up to see on all those other cases where only a trace of snow has fallen in December, what the final outcome was for the winter season. But yes, believe it or not, we did actually see a trace of snow at the park on the 7th of December. A day that will live in winter infamy, I guess.
right. By the way, just talk about weird things. I'm just going to bring up this temperature anomaly map of Asia because this was truly talk about extremes in both directions, Joe. Last week, across much of China, Thailand, and a few of other countries there, had all-time record high temperatures for the month of December broken, not just on one day, but several days. And now they have gone not only completely in the opposite direction, and this is going back to Friday, where you see here on the right side, that is most of China, except the extreme southeast, and then going up through much of China and points northward, below normal temperatures and record all-time lows that were set. And that cold air, with that trough where it is in Alaska, that's where all the cold air is in East Asia. And they went from literally one, I talk about a swing to have all-time record highs followed by all-time record lows. I mean that's crazy. That's crazy.
It is. It is.
Yeah, and the other thing,
and I know a lot of people on the chat board would love to see something like that happen in the foreseeable future here, but we don't see it, at least not just yet.
I just want to take a look here. I got Canada. I got the North America up. So this is this weekend. Look at Canada, except for northwesternmost Canada and Alaska. Alaska's all below normal, but there and Greenland, everybody in between, virtually all of Canada from coast to coast is above normal on Saturday and Sunday. There's no cold air. Now we're into Monday and Tuesday of next week, and then we'll plot along. We go to the end of the forecast period, and you start to see that above normal area shrink. You also see some below normal into the United States with the troughing in the east, the way the model has it. But we got to get rid of some. We got to get rid of that. but it's going to try. If we could get a jet to form, from northwest Canada, start shooting down some colder air, that should whittle that away. But obviously, what's being shown here on the maps in terms of the overall temperature profile across North America is just not conducive to winter weather. Not just here, but pretty much everywhere in the United States.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Everywhere, Joe.
Everywhere.
I mean, again, you would look for a pattern where you say, okay, here's where the cold air is, and here's where we think it's going to be later this week or next week or whatever. But that's assuming that you got cold air to work with. When you don't have much in the way of cold air to work with, it's pretty hard to do any forecasting in terms of a change toward colder conditions.
No, you got to do it with dirty cold air, and that's not an easy thing to pull off. And then it's got to really be perfect. Got to have the high in the right spot. You got to have enough cold air bleeding down. It has happened, but it's got to be a perfect setup. And it's hard to do. It's hard to do in December because of the fact that you're not deep enough into the winter. When you get into later January and February, it's a little bit easier if you've got a pattern where you don't have a lot of cold air around. You can sort of make it work for you if you have the right high and it's in the right spot, and the low is in the right spot, and it takes the right track. But a lot of things have to line up that way. But hey, this is what we have. This is the world we live in right now. This is what's in front of us. None of us can do anything about it to change it. It just, we just have to accept that, and we'll just have to move forward and see what what happy little adventures the models take us on in the coming days and weeks.
Well, I tell you, when you have this type of a pattern where you don't get any snow, not just in Central Park, but even where I live, and usually we have up here in Putnam Valley, we have recorded at least our first and maybe several accumulating snowfalls. I'm not talking about even heavy snow, but I'm talking about, an inch here, a couple inches there. We've gotten nothing. We've gotten butkus. And I tell you, usually when you get that in December, it doesn't bode well for a good snow season. Now, I said, and I'm still going on record as saying that after what we went through last winter with the lack of any significant snowfall in many areas, that we usually come back big time the following winter. I'll still hold to that. But boy, I tell you, if we're going to come back big time, we may very well have to hang our hats on maybe one singular storm like we did in 2016, where that winter we had hardly any snow in December. And then the next month we had 27 inches. And that pretty much was the whole winter right there in one big, woof. We may have to deal with that or hope for something like that this winter season if you're a snow lover.
Yep. Exactly. Do you have Briller Jeopardy or do I?
I think I may have it tonight. I'm going to check my Facebook page. If you just hold on for a second here.
Adam Lowe says U.S. snow cover for today is at the lowest level for the date in the. Well, okay, you say this century, all right. So, are you talking about since 2000, or are you referencing the last 100 years? So, if you can clarify that, if you're saying it's the lowest it's been this century, then we're only talking 23 years. If we're talking about the last 100+ years, that's a different story. So if you could clarify that, that would be nice. Yes. And by the way, yeah, I mean, if we want to argue about the climate, I'm just going to bring this up because I actually watched the CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell tonight. Just want you to know. And I watched their weather coverage, which
had two people from the Weather Channel.
Yes.
Tonight.
And though the teases and the lead-ins were kind of, a little off, but that's because I'm nitpicky. Look, I'm going to just say something. I don't care if it angers anybody, but you can make and let's just. I don't want to get into the political argument that climate change is. I'm not interested in that, but the fact is that we keep. I'm starting to look at all of this, Joe. I don't know how you feel about it. There's a lot of things that are out of sync here, that are happening with regards to, these big storms that we've been getting with these big rainfalls and all the rest of it. And I know some of that is cyclical, but I think Dave Tolerus, kind of put it correctly when talking about the fact that you've got this El Nino going on, and on top of that, you've got 2 degrees of global temperature warming that has occurred. 2 degrees or more of global temperature warming has occurred. So, it's hard to kind of look at that now. It's getting harder and harder to still look at that and say, well, it's part of some sort of natural variation. I'm not so sure anymore.
I'm beginning to feel the same way. And in fact, people, even the long-range forecasters who base a lot of their predictions on, it's based upon things that have happened over the last 50 or 60 or 100 years or whatever like that. What we're seeing right now are things that we have not seen before and cannot base anything on prior to this.
Right.
And
I mean, we've had back-to-back storms before, but I'm having a hard time remembering 2 storms within a week that have produced this one even more than what last week produced, which was a 2 to 5 inch rainfall, followed by 5 days dry, and then and this one was even more than that, so close together. And also the fact that the way this system, the whole origin of this system and how it evolved. I mean, I'm sure if we go back far enough and look at weather maps, we could find similarities to other storms. But I'm just starting to look at all of this and see all these extremes. I mean, who goes from all-time record highs to all-time record lows in 5 days?
Right.
in 5 days. And in some of those places, we're talking about 100-degree plus swings. So it's hard. It's getting harder and harder not to look at all of this and say that they're that and be able to turn around and say, oh, it's just this is just some sort of normal variance. I don't think I'm really having a very tough time with that now.
Can I say it's an inconvenient truth?
Well, it could very well be. But anyway, go on and yeah, Sierra Sites. Nice to see you on the chat board. Yeah, the weather manipulation stuff. You know what? There's all sorts of things that are going on that they experiment on. I'm sure it is. Is it some widespread veiled conspiracy? No. I mean, I can't. I don't see what the point is. All right. What is the point of doing of doing that sort of stuff? No one's ever been able to answer me that question. To what end? Okay. To what end is that? Are they doing this? But of course, all the arms people in their armchairs out on their decks are watching planes spraying stuff and then telling me about it and trying to get some validation, which you're not going to get. So anyway, go on before I get myself into more trouble.
Well, I mean, we could bring on our good friend Bill Corbell. He was. I will use the term harassed to no end by one or a couple of individuals who kept saying the same thing, like it's all due to chemtrails. And
Right.
Bill was trying to say, no, they're contrails. And finally, like one of the guys said, we're just trying to educate you. They're trying to educate a man who,
Don't you love that?
you know,
But you know what that's what a lot of these people that are really passionate about that sort of stuff. They're narcissists. They're saying, they're basically saying, I have this piece of information that nobody else has, and you know, just like Jesus and his disciples, you get the sort of picture of disciples just sort of sitting around a man preaching. Okay, I'm not trying to make this religious or to be sacrilegious here, but these people, that's kind of what their mindset is. It's like, okay, you all need to sit down or get on your knees in front of me while I tell you what the truth is. And then when you get that information, you're going to all go salami, salami, baloney.
yeah. All right. So here we have, and this actually goes back to last Wednesday, I believe. So I apologize, Scott, for not, we had so many things happening that we had to put this on hold. But in the following 5 cities, what was the average low for December, for the month of December? And so the first city out of the 5 is St. Louis. What is the average December low temperature in St. Louis?
In December?
Yes.
I will say 28.
Very, very close, Joe.
Very close.
It's going to be, as Fred Mertz would say, if it were a snake, it would have bit you.
Well, that Keith James II says 26.
Nope.
And I'm trying to guess. 20. Lord Kate at 29.
Well, Patrick Dorsey got it, 29. And who else got it, 29?
Lord Kate.
Okay, well, there you go. It's 29.
29. And Chuck Cardillo, 29.
Chuck Cardillo, too. So let's move a little further south and east to Tampa.
Oh, God. I will say 63.
Yeah, a little bit on the high side.
Okay, I knew it was lower than Miami. Fledweather said 63. Lord Kate and Jason Fox say 64. Christina Pedia said 62. Helen Bertona 61. David Fuller 60. Are we getting close here?
Well, Patrick Dorsey was the first to go into the 50s with 57, and for him, if it were a snake, it would have bit him.
Okay, so that means it's either Maggie P said 58.
Nope.
So that means it's lower. Boy, I'm a little surprised that it's lower than that. 56, 55 for Adam Lowe. So I'm guessing Nobody said 56, so I'll
Oh,
say 56.
all right. Then you got it, Joe.
Flood weather just said 56.
All right. Yes, it's 56.
Okay.
Tampa, beautiful Tampa, downtown. Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Tulsa, Oklahoma. Oh, God. Oh, this is like my brain is not functioning. Tulsa, I'm going to say 38.
Oh, that's way too high, Joe.
Way too high?
Too high,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. I thought I was going to be too low. Lord Kate says 28.
That is too low.
Okay. Leon says 34.
That's not low enough, Leon.
Okay. Patrick Darcy's 33
But Kenneth Rosenberg got it.
at 31.
31, 1 degree below freezing. Believe it or not. Remember where Tulsa is. Sometimes you get
I know.
those
I know.
Texas
Get
Northern.
Texas Northerners. Yeah, I know. My mistake. I wasn't thinking.
How about Virginia Beach? Virginia Beach.
Ginny Beach.
Yes. Not to be confused with Norfolk, but
Right. 45?
would you say 45?
45.
No. You got to give Virginia Beach a little bit more credit than that, Joe.
Too low.
Now, Fledweather got it.
Oh, what did he say?
38.
38.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm feeling a little off tonight.
Well, how about this last one? The District of Columbia, Washington, D.C.
I'll say 29.
No, that's a little bit too low, Joe.
Okay. Let's see. DC. Lord Kate is at 30. Fledweather's at 33. Alan Rupus is 37. I think that's too high. Leon's at 34.
Michael Azera is in the snake category.
32. William Uber's at 31.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry about that. No, he's not in the snake category with 30. Did anybody?
David Fuller has 34.
That's snaky.
Okay. So it's either 33 or 35. So I will say 33.
Should have said 35.
I
Joe.
already said 35. Frank R said 33. Christinapedia said 35.
Well, there you go.
So
Congratulations.
she got okay.
You're not going to win anything. You don't win anything with this, but you know. And now here is a bonus question. And before I do the bonus question, I should really hit the bell. Where's the bell? Oh, there it is. Because we did hit 100 likes. On my scoreboard it says 126. But here's the bonus question, Joe. Average low temperature in the month of December for Caribou.
The average low temperature for caribou?
Yes. In December.
17?
Not quite cold enough.
Really? I was going to say originally 15. But I went with 17. Northern Grace said 11.
Well, that's another snake category one, if I can say that.
So it's either 12 or 10, so I'll say 12.
And you got it.
And so did David Fuller
12.
with 12.
The average low in Caribou. I'm not sure if they've been hitting that a lot this particular month of December, but on long-term averages, that's their average is 12.
12. Okay. Just to let everybody know, if in case you can't get on YouTube for some reason, or you can't make the live show and can't get on YouTube to watch the replay, you can watch the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast on. Are you ready, Joe? We're on all these networks: Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Castbox, Google Podcasts, which soon will become YouTube Podcasts, which we are there, iHeartRadio, Overcast, Pocket Casts, and Radio Public. So we're in a lot of places. This show is in a lot of places. So just to let you know that if you can't, for whatever reason, if you can't get us here, you can get us there. Okay. And the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast is brought to you by Tempest by WeatherFlow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system and join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. Link is pinned to the top of the chat board, also on the description to this video. Tempest is an affiliate of the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Use the coupon code I want a weather station for any of your purchases, and you will get
10% off. And I might add that back in the early days of radio in the 1920s, and this was explained once by the late, great news anchor H.V. Keltenborn, that when NBC started with their network, whoever was the staff announcer on the hour listed all of the stations on the network until finally he was breathless. He was almost out of breath. So finally, somebody said, there must be a better way to identify the NBC network rather than run through all of the stations on our network. And that's when somebody came up with the chimes. Doom, doom, doom.
NBC.
If you heard that, you knew you were on the NBC network, and you didn't have to. The announcers didn't have to go through like dozens of different stations that belong to NBC. So maybe someday we'll have something like that, Joe. We'll be heard on so many social media networks that instead we'll have to come up with a sound that's distinctive for us.
Oh, I could think of a few sounds that are distinctive to us. Oh, the world we live in. We're a couple of sickos. We are. We're sick, Joe, and getting sicker.
We will be back tomorrow night at 7:35 on the penultimate before Christmas Joe and Joe weathercast. So there you go.
Right, because after Wednesday, folks, we're going to be off Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and then we'll be back on the 26th.
Right.
All right. See you tomorrow.
Bye.